the top 10 reasons why you need a will. So people don't like thinking about their own death. It's not fun. It doesn't add a lot to your day-to-day enjoyment in life, but planning for what inevitably will happen at some point in your life is going to be really important for a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons. But we're going to just deal with the top 10 as we come up here. Others come up, so if you have questions, reach out, but they're really important. A will, hands down, is one of the best examples of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in law. It prevents all kinds of problems that we're going to go over now, so you can get a feel around it and think about what's important to you and your family and protecting them. So, 1, avoiding family disputes. People don't like to think as their family is having problems with each other, but money can sometimes make a big impact on that. And every time this comes up, we always hear, it's not about the money, it's not about the money, it's not about the money, but often it's exactly about the money, and it creates this internal turmoil amongst family members. You don't want that. By setting out very specifically what your actual wishes are, it allows your beneficiaries and your family and your kids to know what you want, to eliminate those arguments about, well, mom would have wanted this, dad would have wanted that, when really you have the opportunity by creating your will to set out exactly what your wishes are. Next, it also allows you to control how your estate is divided. So sometimes you might want to adjust for certain things. Maybe you have a child that you gave a lot of money to during the course of your life for investing in a business of theirs or something along those lines, and you want to offset it with once you're passed, or maybe help one child buy a house, you didn't help the other buy the house. Whatever the reason are at the time, your will allows you to distribute your funds exactly how you want them to be, so that you have that control. Maybe you think, well, I've got too much money for my kids. It's going to go to their heads, or they can't control it right. You can say, well, I want to leave some of it to charity, and there could be tax reasons for doing that, and some to the family, some to nieces or nephews or grandkids. It is entirely up to you. If you fail to have a will, then you don't get that say. The government has legislation that says exactly who gets what, and there's no deviating from that. So if it's important for you to decide how your estate is distributed, you're going to want to look into that. Next, in your will, you appoint who your personal representative. Now, in the old days, and we're talking like a couple years ago, the term used to be executor, executrix. They've now gone with a generic kind of personal representative. And that's the person who's going to manage your estate. By you picking who manages the estate, you're obviously going to pick someone who you trust, that you have faith in, who can look after your assets and make sure that they're distributed properly. Otherwise, you could have fights between family members where one person says, I want to manage this person's estate. No, I want to manage this person's estate. And those people might have very different views on how to go about doing that. So you get the chance, by creating it in your will, to set out who exactly is going to be in charge of managing everything once you don't have the ability to do that anymore. Really important. Next, guardians for children. This one is key. If you have kids, or if you have grandkids that you could potentially become the guardians to, setting up something in the will that says who looks after them is very, very important. Not only does it put certainty as to who will have that role, and it's an important one, but it also gives them the heads up. If you choose, you don't have to tell them, but it's not one of those things you want to surprise people with. But it also allows you to pick someone who's got similar values, beliefs, religious beliefs, ideas about education, all those things. So by you picking the person, you can avoid people who have a very different belief system than you, even if it's family members, and you get to choose what's right for your children. And no one will know best what's right for your children other than you. Really important. Next, and we're at number 5 now, so don't get too bored. Lets you decide when your kids receive their inheritance. So not all 18-year-olds are going to be really good at managing a large amount of money that they get. It could be that they want to buy cars or go on trips or get the coolest tattoos available. It's going to be really important for you to make sure that you pick somebody who is pick the distribution method to make sure that funds are distributed as you want them to be. For instance, and this doesn't cost anything more, it's all part of a will. You can set out provisions that my son or daughter gets X number of dollars when they turn 20, they get X number of dollars when they turn 25, they can get a percentage of the estate at 25 or 30, like you get to pick all of that. Rest assured that the funds can always be used for education, for living expenses, for things like that. So that's not the issue. It's the bulk sum of money that you distribute as you want. Now, the same can also be said for someone who maybe is not great at using funds. So you can distribute it evenly over time just to protect them. Next, your funeral wishes. This is like a huge variation of what people want. Some people want to be cremated, some people don't. Some people want to have extravagant parties, some want nothing. It really is up to you. And if it's important to you, then your executor should be looking after that, your personal representative, to make sure your wishes are followed. But it's hard to know somebody's wishes unless they've been communicated. You might have done that during your lifetime, but if you didn't or if they've changed, you get to assess and put it down in writing in your will to make sure that those things are followed. Next, I want to talk about something that's updating wills. This is going to be a little bonus on here, but it's important. Sometimes things in life change, and it's going to be really important for you to update your will, and not just creating the new one, but updating it from an old one. And most often, the most cost-effective way of making a change to an old will is going to be redoing the whole thing. And then you're not worried about was something drafted improperly or anything like that, and you get to make those changes. When do you want to make sure you're updating it or getting a new one, changing out an old one? If you have kids, if someone has passed away in your family, if executors are too old, if a trustee is too old or guardians are too old to look after kids, any of those kind of things, any kind of major life changes are going to be important. Now, a properly drafted will is going to avoid having to make changes or get new wills done. So getting kits is not always the kind you get online or from a store, is not always the way to go. One, people fill them out wrong all the time. And we have a lot of good case law about interpreting wills based on people screwing up their will kits. Two, they're often made for different jurisdictions. So you want to make sure you have a will that's valid in the city or province or country even that you live in. That's going to be important. And three, updates. A lot of these kits or online things are set up, but then the law changes. You want to make sure you're getting the most recent version. By making sure that it's a properly drafted will, you're not going to have to replace and get a new will over and over again. And the cost of paying someone to review your old one is often much more than just creating a new one. A will is a very efficient, cost-effective way of preventing problems in the future. Next, another reason why it's important to get a will, another top 10, is it lets you give gifts to non-family members and to charities. So we've seen some unusual ones, like we've had family members who pass away who then leave to a neighbor an antique tractor and $5,000 to restore it. It could be anything. It could be gifting cats or dogs or anything to anyone you want. You get to pick. And that includes charities. Now, you're going to want to work with your wills lawyer to make sure that the way you structure for charities is really well done, because that's important. But you get to pick. Again, if you don't have a will, you have no say. It's the government's list of if this person's alive, they get everything. If they're not, then these people get it. If they're not alive, these people get it. And so on until the default, if there's no one else, is it goes to the government for use in universities or colleges or schools, that kind of thing. And you don't really want that to happen. You've probably paid enough taxes over your life. Last, it's also good for putting your will together, gives you that opportunity to talk to a wills lawyer. And having those conversations with the wills lawyer is going to be really important because it lets you think about things like tax savings. There's a way of structuring things for tax purposes. Making sure that your personal situation, especially with blended families, to make sure that your estate is looked after, that things aren't being misdone or done poorly, that will end up in a result that your kids don't get any of your estate because the bulk of the estate just transferred over to your partner or a former partner even. So it's going to be really important to sit down with the lawyer. People have a lot of misconceptions. So they think, my one parent hasn't been in my life my whole life. They left when I was 2, so everything will automatically go to my parent who was with me. No, the law, if you don't have a will, doesn't distinguish between those things. The law says that your parents would be equally entitled whether or not they're in your life or not. Another good reason for getting the will. I hope this information was great for you, that you're able to use it for looking forward and thinking about and planning about why it's important for you to have a will and the kind of things you want to put into the will so that when you reach out to a lawyer, they can help you draft it properly for you to protect not just you, but your wishes and your family as well.